wanted to pass greetings to my fellow bikers from yesterday. I was at an event, and they noticed I was following them out, coming up the road towards, I guess, Gozina, Matsapa, that area, and I swerved off. And this senior still has a need for speed. So they were just going too slow. So. Also, I'm not sure who this is up here. So if you get distracted while I'm speaking, I'm not sure if it's Gideon, the angel of the Lord, or one of the Midianites. I'm honestly not sure. It is Gideon. All right. Anyway. It's kind of funny to have that as a backdrop. There's something else I just want to mention before I start. James gives an admonition. Do not become teachers in large numbers, my brothers, since you know that we who are teachers will incur a stricter judgment, for we all stumble in many ways. My wife can attest, I don't need an additional judgment or avenue of judgment. I have enough problems. But to be up here in front of you, it does carry a heavy weight. So I want to do justice to that and pray that what I have helps us in introspection so that when we leave here today, we can walk out and maybe think about what does it mean to be a Christian a little differently than how we walked in. I also want to point out that, and I'll be reading from this so you didn't miss anything, that you can never get too much of the word. The reading from Matthew is actually chapter 6. So close enough, it doesn't matter. I'll be reading a lot of it anyway. So I titled this talk, Wrong Race or Wrong Kit. And my wife, she read the message last night. She goes, what's a kit? And I think most of everybody here would know a kit is the outfit, the supplies that you go with for whatever sport that you're going to be participating in. And then the other title I have is They Have Their Reward. I struggled to put a title to this message. I started with bringing a knife to a gunfight, but that didn't sound appropriate either. I thought about the feeling of showing up for a football game only to find out it was a rugby match, or a track meet, or gymnastics, or anything. Anything but what you expected, trained for, and dressed for. Or, and I hate to bring this one up because it's been, I'm not a big advocate, but maybe closer. What about professional wrestling? I haven't watched it much, but what I remember is the wrestler comes out from the dressing room to fireworks, pounding music, cheers and applause if they're the good guy, jeers and heckling if the bad guy, thumping their chest, putting on a big show. What if no one ever told them they actually had to go in the ring and fight? Their reward was the public attention they got. And they felt they were the winner just for showing up. So enough of my real or fake sports analogies, they can only go so far. Let me ask a better question. Why do we participate in sport, in business, and spiritual pursuits? Each canon has been likened to a race of sorts. When you get to the end of the race, what are you going to do if it's the wrong race? What if you're participating under rules that are made up of the wrong rules? I tried to find examples from the Old Testament or Hebrew Bible to illustrate lessons Jesus taught during his ministry. They're not always perfect analogies, but hopefully they'll get across some of the points. The first analogy is the story of Moses and Korah. as related in the book of Numbers. The story recounts what is called the fifth murmuring against Moses and Aaron by the Israelites after they had left Egypt. Wandering in the wilderness, they seem to miss the point time after time. In this particular episode, Korah is able to convince Dathan, Abiram, On, and 250 other leaders in the camp that they should be in charge and not Moses. Using the sports analogy, they didn't recognize what the event was that they were even participating in. Nothing they accused Moses of doing or the cause of their current situation was true. It was all based on misrepresenting or ignoring the truth and history of past events. They thought they were in a simple competition with Moses for power and influence. They didn't recognize that Moses' power and influence all came from God. It was not something that he held for himself. Korah says, "You have gone far enough for all the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is in your midst. So why do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?" First, Moses didn't want the job and never lorded the position over them. He was humble and meek. Second, Moses' own words were, "Are you jealous for my sake? Would that all the Lord's people were prophets, that the Lord would put his spirit upon them." And this is when Joseph had asked to restrain several who were prophesying in the camp, and this is on a different occasion. Korah is projecting his own attitudes and failings onto Moses. He's accusing Moses of acting like he would act if he was in that role. While he's participating in a bigger story, he's making up his own rules and not understanding or recognizing his place in the story. Moses tells Korah and his group to show up with fire in their censers and appear before the Lord. Two of Korah's group, Dathan and Eliab, refuse outright to participate. This is different from showing up to the wrong sport or the wrong kid. It's just refusing to even participate. "We will not come up. Is it not enough that you have brought us up from a land flowing with milk and honey, that is Egypt, to have us die in the wilderness, but you would also lord it over us? Indeed, you have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, nor have you given us an inheritance of fields and vineyards. Would you put out the eyes of these men? We will not come up." Misrepresenting Moses, failing to take responsibility for why they were wandering in the wilderness, failing to understand that refusing to participate doesn't absolve responsibility for decisions. I'm sure you've heard the decision, no decision is still making a decision. Well, not participating is still participating, just not in the way that everyone else is. Moses said, "By this you'll know that the Lord has sent me to do all these deeds, for this is not my doing. If these men die the death of all men, or if they suffer the fate of all men, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord brings about an entirely new thing, and the ground opens its mouth and swallows them up with all that is theirs, and they descend alive into Sheol, then you will understand that these men have spurned the Lord." As he finished speaking all these words, the ground that was under them split open. This would have been an amazing movie. "And the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up, and their households, and all the men who belonged to Korah with their possessions. So they with all that belonged to them went down alive to Sheol, and the earth closed over them, and they perished from the midst of the assembly. And fire also came out from the Lord and consumed the 250 men who were offering the incense." Now, judgments in our eyes are decidedly harsh. And this is the second line of my title, that they have their reward. But also recognizing that Korah's complaint was actually against God and not Moses. They were in a story which was much bigger than themselves, that they were choosing to ignore the rules or make up their own, which in fact, God set the ground rules and the boundaries. With much higher stakes than a trophy, with the Israelites surviving as God's chosen representatives and people on earth. Although there was always a faithful remnant, Israel as a people never did grasp fully the relationship to God and the responsibility to the nations surrounding them, the people surrounding them. The second example I have is found in the person of Solomon. How did God describe Solomon early in his reign as king? "Because you've asked this thing and have not asked for yourself long life, nor have asked riches for yourself, nor have you asked for the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself discernment to understand justice. Behold, I have done according to your words. Behold, I have given you a wise and discerning heart, so that there has been no one like you before you, nor shall one like you arise after you. I have also given you what you have not asked, both riches and honor, so there will not be any among the kingdoms like you all your days. Jesus also spoke of the wisdom of Solomon as unsurpassable. When you read Solomon's treatise towards the end of his life, what did he have to say? Then I became great and increased more than all who preceded me in Jerusalem. My wisdom also stood by me. All that my eyes desired, I did not refuse them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure. My heart was pleased because of all my labor. Solomon ended up living a life where anything he desired, he took. Anything he lusted after, he took. And his response to this life lived for what he could grab now was, this was the reward for all my labor. The reward he was living for was what he could receive in this life. But he did come to a different conclusion later. Thus I considered all my activities which my hands had done and the labor which I had exerted. And behold, all was vanity and striving after wind, and there was no profit under the sun. Go then, eat your bread in happiness, and drink your wine with a cheerful heart, for God has already approved your works. Let your clothes be white all the time, and let not oil be lacking on your head. Enjoy life with the woman you love all the days of your fleeting life, which he has given to you under the sun. For this is your reward in life and in your toil which you have labored under the sun. And then the conclusion, when all has been heard, is fear God and keep his commandments. Because this applies to every person. For God will bring every act to judgment, everything which is hidden, whether it's good or evil. So Solomon went from pursuing a reward from God to a reward fulfilling every fleshly desire, and his later years back to pursuing God, which is actually a beautiful story of redemption as well, and returning to the God of his youth. Early in Jesus' ministry, Jesus gave the Sermon on the Mount, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. And I excuse my continued sports analogies. But it set the ground rules for what it looked like to be a follower or disciple. In Matthew chapter 5, it says, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. He opened his mouth and began to teach them. I'm sure you heard I think it's 9 Beatitudes? 8 Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit. And what does he say? The reward, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn. And what is the reward? For they shall be comforted. Blessed are the gentle. Reward, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Reward, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful. Reward, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart. Reward, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers. Reward again, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who have been persecuted for the sake of righteousness. It's the reward, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. And the final reward, rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great. He then continues to teach about appropriate relationships of the disciples to the world and managing interpersonal relationships. Chapter 5 is seen as Jesus' teaching on the righteousness his disciples should possess. Chapter 6 is Jesus' teaching on the righteousness his disciples should practice. In chapter 6, he taught several additional examples on effort and reward. Let me stop here and just mention Solomon again. Solomon was clearly talking about fulfilling every fleshly desire, craving, and lust, There's no mention of trying to please God. And Solomon clearly said that fulfilling all his desires was his reward. They were in and of themselves the reward. When it was over, it was over. Reward was fleeting. But he wasn't putting on a show to impress anyone about how holy and self-righteous he was. In Matthew chapter 6, Jesus talks about 3 specific actions and pursuits and the rewards associated with them. He listed them all under the overarching banner of your righteousness. Verse 1, practicing your righteousness before men. What's the reward? Being noticed by men. Counter reward. You have no reward with your Father who is in heaven. Verses 2 to 4 speak about giving to the poor. And I think we would all agree that giving to the poor is a good thing. What about when it isn't? So when you give to the poor, do not sound a trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may be honored by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward in full. But when you give to the poor, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving will be in secret, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. So what is their reward? So that they may be honored by men. Jesus says, truly I say to you, they have their reward in full. Verses 5 to 6 speak about praying. And again, I think we would all agree that praying is a good thing. But what about when it isn't? When you pray, you are not to be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and on the street corners, so that they may be seen by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward in full. But you, when you pray, go into your inner room, close your door, and pray to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. What's the reward? So that they may be seen by men. And Jesus said again, truly I say to you, they have their reward in full. Finally, in verses 16 to 18, it speaks about fasting. And again, I think we would all agree fasting is a good thing. But what about when it isn't? Whenever you fast, do not put on a gloomy face as the hypocrites do, for they neglect their appearance so they be noticed by men while they are fasting. Truly I say to you, they have their reward in full. But you, when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, so that your fasting will not be noticed by men, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Again, what's the reward? So they be noticed by men. Jesus says, truly I say to you, they have their reward in full. I think there's a higher degree of honesty in Solomon's pursuit of self-gratification than the examples Jesus gave of acting out righteousness for God, but only for the purpose of being honored by other people. And of course, he was talking specifically about the religious elite, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Now back to my sports analogies. Wrong race, wrong kid. Honored, seen, and noticed by other people. If that was their goal, they won their reward. If it was not their goal, they were in the wrong race. With the wrong kid and playing by the wrong rules. What if your life was spent in pursuit of a reward, but your pursuit was all meant to gain you attention from other people while you thought you were a shoo-in for heaven? Seeking praise from people, seeking to be seen by other people, self-righteousness, arrogance. And I think we can all give examples of people we've seen in the public or news or even social media that may fit these descriptions. It's very easy to point accusing fingers at other people. But I want to invite each of us to reflect on ourselves and truly evaluate our own motivations and actions. Why do we do what we do? Is it to be seen? Is it to be recognized? Is it to gain the accolades from other people? You think about which reward are you actually seeking? At the end, when you have already received it, won't that be disappointing? To think that you were in one race, find out that you were actually competing in another. So which race are you running? Whose rules are you participating by? In the letter to the Colossians, Paul wrote in chapter 3, whatever you do, do your work heartily as for the Lord rather than for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance. It is the Lord Christ whom you serve. So the reward is that inheritance. What you receive in this world, essentially, if that's the reward you're seeking, then you will have already received it, but you're not part of the inheritance. In the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, by faith Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to endure ill treatment with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin, considering the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking to the reward. Again, what reward was that? It wasn't here. So my prayer for myself first is to have a pure heart before God. My motives are pure, to live a life reflecting his love, grace, and mercy. Not being self-righteous or arrogant towards other people, but always living humbly towards others who are themselves on their own journey. To receive the reward of the inheritance. My prayer for each of you is similar, that we would learn to walk in humility, reflecting his love, grace, and mercy to a lost and dying world. That's my prayer. If we could all stand. I want to pray before we go into the benediction. That's okay. Father, we come before you as a broken, sinful people, relying on what your Son did at Calvary. It's only by your grace and your mercy we can call you Father. We all look to the reward of that inheritance which has been promised. And I pray for my heart, I pray for each heart here, Father, that you would help us in recognizing when we've stepped over the bounds, when we've acted out of arrogance and self-righteousness and judgment. And it's not for us to judge, but to extend grace and mercy. Forgive us when we try to step out and be seen. When we step out and try to receive accolades from people around us, from men. Pray that we be faithful to serving you and you only. And it is true that what we do in secret you will see. You know our hearts better than we know them. I just pray for a right way of living, a right way of extending that grace. Again, in humility, knowing where we've come from. I just ask this all in Jesus' name.